Who are you? And where are you going? What do you want? For the next 24 minutes, we're going to design and attain your ideal life. On the Way to Wow Show. Together, we'll find the ideal path to get you back on the track to success and happiness. On the Way to Wow Show with your host, Kevin Bemel.
Hola, and welcome to eccentric Los Angeles. More specifically, welcome to Jiggers' place. Jiggers was my Jack Russell Terrier that I had for many, many years. Originally was my wife's dog, but I stole his affections. He was really the most charismatic dog I ever met. We would walk down the street and people would stop me because they wanted to meet my dog. And so I made up a motto for Jiggers, and it was that there are no strangers in the world, just friends we haven't met yet. In any event, I hope you'll join us here each week when we talk with some of the most interesting and innovative people when it comes to living the life that you want, and answer two questions together. Who are you, and what do you want? We're going to find out here at Jiggers' Place. In addition to being the composer of the theme song for The Way to Wow, Brendan McCullough also builds and tends bars. He's the founder of the innovative bar, Sunset and Vinyl. Brandon, welcome to The Way to Wow.
Thank you.
What are you going to mix up for us today?
Today I was going to do a classic Tennessee Old Fashioned. All right, so I'm going to stir this up.
So what did you put in yours?
So I start with the sugar cubes. Since we're making two, I used two and doubled up my recipe. And then I like working with the sugar cube because it's just really tactile to mush it up, and it feels better than just simple sugar. And then Angstrom bitters, which is like my favorite, pretty much the standard classic.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like with the old fashioned, you want to go like the standard classic as much as possible. No one wants like a play on this drink.
Yeah.
But then I use rye bourbon. That's my favorite.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's a little spicier then, huh?
Yeah. Gives a little more flavor. And then, just stirring it up in the glass, pouring it in, and then we will express the orange.
Oh, okay.
I love that term. It's like so fancy for just squeezing.
You're right.
It's expressing.
Yes. The orange is going to give it its truest.
But it really does something. At first I used to be like, come on, that's not doing anything. But the oil from it, can I do something weird?
Yeah.
Open your mouth. Isn't that crazy?
Oh, yeah.
The first time a bartender did that to me, I was like, oh, you're not just like doing extra stuff for the tip. That really works. Yeah,
it might have been, but it was real.
Yeah, it might have been. But then some people light that because you can light this on fire and it's a little more pizzazz, but it actually wrecks it. So you want to not light it. It's just so the oil, because that'll burn the oil. Oh, and the oil just wants to sit on the surface of the cocktail. Oh. Two classic old fashions, sir.
Voila. Thank you, sir. I'm gonna try mine. Delicious. Absolutely. Wow. Here, Megan, this is a little gift from Brandon. Why don't you try that out? Tell me what you think.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Delicious.
A genuine old-fashioned, huh?
Love it.
My next guest is Megan Retterath. She's a certified advanced nurse practitioner, right?
Perfect.
Did I get that right?
You got it.
More importantly, perhaps, she's the Chief Medical Officer for Next Health. This is a health optimization organization. And a little, snippet of personal information. Almost a year ago, I showed up at Next Health's door, referred by a friend of mine who's a sleep specialist. And, at the time, I was overweight. Sometimes my energy level was so bad, I would get up in the morning and it would be all I could do not to crawl into bed an hour later. Within 4 months of working with Megan and her team, I had dropped weight down to an optimal level. I was sleeping well, I had energy. In fact, I had the energy to put together this show. So in a way, Megan, you're responsible for us being here today. I'm going to let Megan talk about the work that she's doing, and just start out. Tell me, what do you feel are the, if you will, signs of optimum health?
Yeah, I mean, that is, first off, thank you for having me. But really, I think now, today, more than ever, we are taking and defining what health is. You know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we're seeing our health is being put to the test. So I like to view health is on like a pillar, or maybe better yet for the context of this conversation, like a bar stool. So at the seat of that bar stool, we see, if I can choose, it says optimal health. And the 5 things that I think are the foundation of optimal health are, the first is biomarker testing. So understanding where is your current health state at today, and how do we make pivots to get those values to where we want them to be. The second thing we would consider through optimal health is sleep. So what are your sleep patterns? What type of sleep or what type of quality of sleep are you getting? The third would be nutrition. So what type of diet are you consuming? The fourth would be movement or exercise. Not just working out with your trainer every day, but what does moving your body look like? And the last would be stress management. So mindfulness, meditation, any sort of aspect of where you're going to be coming back to yourself and focusing on eliminating that stress.
So that's interesting, because aside from the biomarkers, which is how, as a professional, I guess, you determine whether someone's making progress. So you've got sleep, diet, and exercise, which are the 3 realms of the physical pillar and the 3 pillars of attainment. And then you've got mindset, which is one of the realms in the mental pillar. So we're exactly aligned on that. So talk to me, first of all, give me an example, if you would, about what is a biomarker. I mean, it sounds, very, mysterious and scientific, but see if, for those of us who, my wife is an RN, has had no impact on my ability to understand healthcare matters. So talk to, a complete layperson.
So biomarker testing is taking the scientific numbers that we have studied. For example, your hemoglobin A1C. That's a cumulative report of the last 4 months of everything you've taken in to eat. So alcohol consumption, food consumption, everything you've eaten. And it gives us an overall average of what your blood sugar value typically is. But then the second factor of that is looking at insulin. How does your body respond to the food, the nutrition, the alcohol consumption that you're putting into your body? So it's looking at more of a cumulative factor, looking at things like hormones, aspects that are dictative or allowing us to see into your health from a larger perspective, so that before you get to the degree of a disease, before you get to the degree of a chronic ailment, we're able to take these biomarker lab values and make impressions on them prior to you developing a chronic disease.
Well, that's fascinating. Although it is a little bit scary that you can look at my hemoglobin, I guess, and see what there's no hiding.
There's no cheating with me.
No cheating, right?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Well,
Did you get arrested for what's in that report, the A1C?
that's. I mean, you get pulled over for having overly alcoholic hemoglobin or something, I guess. Right. So talk about sleep. So. We live in a highly stressful society, and I know for myself, I've struggled with sleep my whole life, and it took me years to really understand what it meant to sleep well. Tell us about that, please.
And when I look at health, what I think we're missing in our society is we can't just look at the disgruntled sleep patterns that you have. We have to come back out, take a few steps out, and understand what is getting you to those poor sleep patterns. And that is not just you have poor sleep, but what are your hormones? When you're not sleeping, you don't produce hormones. So it's very difficult for me to say it is only your disrupted sleep that's causing your sleep to continue to get worse. There's always a multitude of factors, and going back to the pillar, we go in and I evaluate what vitamin deficiencies are you lacking? What is your melatonin level production like? How are you moving your body? How are you exercising? And when we're able to impact the 5 main pillars of our health, we start to see every other pillar, every other aspect incorporates into really the overall systemic function and the improvement in our body. So when we go and look at sleep, for example, we want to see our body go into a cumulative 5 to 7 sleep-wake cycles. And that's not you waking up, but it's the degree or the amount of REM sleep that you're actually accumulating through one night of restful sleep. So when, most of the time I'll ask people, how many hours of sleep do you get? So let's say you're averaging 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. But what is the quality of that sleep? That is most important. So there's great tracking devices, the Oura Ring, there's so many different devices that you can track your sleep. And that's what's most important, is the quality of your sleep, not just the quantity of your sleep. So if you're getting poor sleep, your inflammatory markers are going to be high the next day. You have a 64% chance of increasing your metabolic response the following day. So you make poor food choices. It's difficult to concentrate. It's more difficult to focus just with one night of poor sleep. So when we're looking at the overall, how optimal are you, how optimal is your health, we can't just say it's your sleep, because lack of exercise, lack of movement, high stress, all of these factors are contributing to poor quality sleep. So, we want to look at a couple things when we're just, simply talking about sleep. Is what is your sleep hygiene like? Like, what is your bedtime routine? Limiting screen time before and making sure you have a good sleep hygiene prior to going to sleep. But then really tracking your sleep. What type of sleep quality are you actually getting? And that's when we can do a deeper dive into say, how do we fix your sleep? Because fixing just your sleep isn't going to fix your experiences that you're, noticing the following day, like your brain fog, fatigue, poor workouts or poor performance. So in order to get a true, quantitative result of sleep, looking at biomarkers leads us into impacting numbers to help improve the quality of your sleep.
So, and I'm trying to put this in my own words and make sure that I'm getting this. So it sounds like what you're saying is sleep is one factor in a more holistic approach to optimizing our health. Would that be
completely?
Okay.
Yeah.
So then would you say it's the same thing with respect to diet, with respect to movement or exercise, even with respect to stress or mindset? Each one of those is just one piece of putting this overall puzzle together?
Completely. And, when we look at the amount of nutrition, one of the pillars in my perspective of health optimization is nutrition. And even within the last 9 years, we've been studying the amount of iron in our spinach. And the amount of iron in our spinach has declined by 97%. So even if we are eating an organic, healthy diet, our foods are nutrient poor. They're not nutrient dense. So, understanding where are your vitamin deficiencies, where are your micronutrient deficiencies? Because if your cells are nutritionally depleted, no matter what impact that you have of, working on your sleep, your body doesn't have a high functioning cell in order to perform what its specific function is for. So for example, let's say you have a brain cell and you have poor sleep. Well, couple, a micronutrient or depleted cell or a poor functioning mitochondria, that brain of your cell, the cell function is not going to be carried out effectively. And then couple poor sleep on top of it. So it's very much a compounded effect. So if we can begin to address kind of these 5 main pillars, we work on your exercise, we work on your sleep, we work on your nutrition, we start to see all of them, even with an improvement in your nutrition alone, we start to see an impact in your sleep as well. So it's literally looking at the big, 5 components of that healthy or health optimization and where we want you to go that's going to allow us to achieve an improvement of your sleep by addressing all of those main foundations as well.
So I can almost hear this question boiling up from the production team, that's surrounding us. I mean, this all sounds great. Eat well, sleep better, pay attention to my sleep hygiene, all these things. Sounds like a lot of work, a lot of self-discipline, and I forget if I mentioned before, but I tried dieting for a couple of years, before I came to see you folks. And I think I managed to gain a pound, that kind of, right? So it's so frustrating. So if we want to optimize our health, how do we get started in a way in particular in a way that is sustainable and you know what I'm saying? Because there's nothing more frustrating than you get started and then finally you just throw up your hands. I'm done.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing about today is we have so many different health platforms. It's almost now today, we're drinking out of a fire hose. There's so much information coming at us. But the big plan, and you can say I've tried the diet, I've done the workouts, and I actually gained weight. That is key. That is key for any person that I see is when you acknowledge it, you are in realistic expectations of what you want. But I think the reason most diets fail, most health objectives fail is because one, it maybe wasn't your objective to begin with. And so when you're looking to get healthy, it's defining what does that look like for you. And I always ask my patients, what are your top 3 health goals? And maybe they can't describe it in a way that I understand, but repeating that goal back. You want to lose weight, but you want to lose, how much weight? You want to lose 3 pounds of weight, 5 pounds of weight, but why? So what is that motivating factor? Is it to fit in that dress? Is it to look better? Is it to feel better? What is that motivator for you? And a lot of times it has nothing to do with that personal individual goal. It has to do with someone else. So I think really getting a good description, working with someone who is that focused on meeting your goals, rather than coming to me and saying, my goal for you is going to be a little bit different than what you want to achieve. But ideally, we'll meet in the middle, because as a health optimization practitioner, I want to make sure I'm setting you up for success. And that looks like meeting your goals and objectives as well. But, it's also important to understand that if you tried 50 times to lose weight and failed all 50 times, I'm confident that when you're working with the right practitioner to understand what are your health goals and what are your health objectives, those goals will be met. And it starts with coming up with a plan that is achievable. So maybe it's not losing 20 pounds right away, maybe it's losing 3. And it's understanding what is contributing to that weight gain. What is contributing to those things that are causing you to gain weight? And for a lot of people, it's interrupted sleep. If you're having interrupted sleep, there's no way you're going to be able to lose weight. How are you exercising? How are you moving your bodies? Believe it or not, there's not one study for women suggesting you should continue to do high intensity interval training. Some people have genetics that say you should not do high intensity interval training, and instead you should do more body weight training. So understanding and finding someone who's going to work with your specific health goals and objectives, and coming up with an actionable treatment plan that's achievable on a day-to-day basis. And I feel like everyone is giving all of this information, and we're trying to drink it out of a water hose, and it's too much. And it's, people get very specific in one. People become very specific and very knowledgeable in one diet type, in one element or one specialty, but in all actuality, when you can compound those effects and improving those 5 pillars, you're going to notice a benefit in so many other avenues. So it's really finding someone who can help understand your goals and break it down and come up with realistic time frames of when you're going to achieve those goals, because eating healthy is a lot of work. Changing and modifying your sleep is a ton of work. And all of this is incredibly frustrating, because if you are spending and committing the time and the money to change your nutrition, change how you eat, change your sleeping patterns, you're going to want to see a benefit or see a result. And so it's coming up and helping someone really break down the science of what is stopping you from getting there, and being able to change those to help get you to where you need to go.
So last question. What is a question, and I know you've been interviewed many, many times, what is a question you've always wanted to be asked in an interview and never have?
Do blondes have more fun?
And the answer is?
They do.
They do. Yeah. Well, I've seen your Instagram feed, and if there's anyone having more fun than you, I'm not sure who she is. Well, so Megan, before we go, we have your thing here for our collage. We're building a collage up here on this board behind, up above the fireplace. If you want to go ahead and stick that up there. Just any old place. Doesn't have to be. It can be. Or it doesn't have to be. Square to the grid. It can be at an angle or wherever you want it to be.
I'm going front and center.
Front and center. All right, and Brandon, you've got your thing here. Why don't you come and paste this up there as well?
Okay.
Again,
I'll just be like her rhythm guitar player for her.
Oh yeah, feed right into that optimal sleep.
So Brandon, Megan, thank you very much for being here. It was the cocktails were delicious, the information amazing. Thanks for being on the Way to Wow show.
Thank you.
Rhino Williams is the founder and proprietor at Lost Property, my personal favorite bar. I've spent quite a bit of time bending the elbow there with my favorite Welshman, right? And Rhino is here today to mix something up special for my next guest, who you also know well, Michael Hartman, right?
Very well.
So what are you going to make for us?
I'm going to make a gin Gibson.
A gin Gibson. Oh,
It's
okay.
a very easy cocktail, but it's one of those 2-ingredient cocktails that if you don't do it exactly right, it can be terrible. If you do it right, it's going to be excellent, you know. So you've got nowhere to hide behind flavors on that one. So do you want to grab those 2 chill glasses over there while I get going on this? So I'm going to, for 2 cocktails, I'm going to throw 2 ounces. If you can find it right here. There you go, 2 ounces of the dried vermouth.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Those there. I won my stripes as bar assistant.
There you go. There you go. I can pass that to you then if you want to do that. There you go. And then right here, I got 2. I'm going to do 4 ounces of a London Dry. If you can find the measurement right here. Where is it? There it is. Okay.
So this is the same ingredients as a martini, but kind of a different mix?
You just it's just the garnish is a difference.
Oh, okay.
We're doing the cocktail onions. My personal favorite when it comes to flavor profiles. I love the vinegar, you know, so I'm a big vinegar component. So give it a little stir. Give it like
I definitely like onions better than olives.
Yeah. I don't hate olives, but I just prefer the cocktail onion. So we're just gonna pour these 2 in. There you go. No waste.
Wow, super simple.
It's nice and simple. Garnished with a cocktail onion. And there you are.
Beautiful. I'm going to take them over there. Well, actually, I'm going to take a sip first.
There you go.
I'm thirsty. Beautiful.
There you go, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Enjoy.
Thank you. So this is from Rhino, our favorite bartender, right?
Awesome.
All those years. Cheers.
Cheers. One of my favorites.
Yeah. So, an atheist and a rabbi walked into a bar. Now, coincidentally, the bar happened to have been Lost Property, one of the establishments that our friend Rhino Williams started. It's on the corner of Hollywood and Vine, a very famous intersection. And thus started a conversation that goes on to this day on every subject that you can imagine. And I tell people about my friend Michael Hartman, and they say, but he's an atheist. And I say, yeah, he's the most Jewish atheist I've ever met. But, you know, it's in good terms because Michael seems to feel that I'm the most atheistic Jew he's ever met. So, you know, it does the doubles, right?
Yeah.
We met every Tuesday night at Lost Property, sometimes, you know, creating a little bit of a crowd. Like, what are these 2 guys talking about here? And I think we've solved pretty much all of the world's problems at this point.
That's how I remember it.
Yeah, okay, well, you know, after 3 or 4 drinks, it's pretty easy to remember that way. So I think people have the wrong idea about what it means to be an atheist, honestly. How did you come to this? Because you didn't grow up as an atheist, right?
Right.
So how did you come to understand the world in the way that you do, if that's a fair question?
Sure. So I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, as you know. And when I became a teenager, a few different things happened, and I started to realize that I didn't necessarily agree with that only the Jehovah's Witnesses would be saved, that they were the only people who were good people. And as that upset me. And I actually went through a period that I kind of describe as spiritual suicide, where I basically felt that I was going to die because I was not a Jehovah's Witness, and that I wasn't going to do those things. But I felt that if there really was a God, there was a loving God, that he would not only restrict to a particular faith or a particular belief system, but I still believed it. Like, I still remained a believer in it. And then it was many years later, over the process of learning more about biology and astronomy and physics and things like that, that I just increasingly didn't see a need for God. And then it was eventually I realized that although I could not and will not exclude the possibility of God, I didn't believe in a God. And that's when I started calling myself an atheist. But I think I'm not necessarily like other atheists in the fact that I'm not what I would call an anti-theist. I'm not against religion. I think religion is important. I think it adds a lot of value. There's a lot of culture there. And so I don't want to see it eliminated. And I appreciate it. I think it adds a lot of value. But I personally don't see the need for God.
Okay. And so, so many things you said are so interesting. I mean, we've talked about this. So, from a Jewish perspective, like, we don't believe that you have to be Jewish in order to have a relationship with God or go to heaven or something like that. And I remember in college, a college friend of mine saying to me, and he was a practicing Catholic at the time. He said, you know, one of the biggest problems I have is that I'm supposed to believe that you're going to hell.
No.
And I said, well, you know, like Mark Twain, it might be okay. Probably a lot of my friends are there, you know. So talk a little bit about, so I perceive you as a deeply spiritual person, right? So talk about, if you would, where that spiritual nature or where that spiritual spark for you comes from.
Well, you know, I think it's interesting because I don't consider myself spiritual, and I don't think an atheist can be spiritual because of the definition of the word. So technically, I don't. However, I think that spiritualness I think there's value in it. I see it as a understanding of feelings, emotion, intuition, and that sort of thing. And so I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say, you know. And so, for example, if I have a friend who is religious and they're going through a tough time, I might encourage them to pray. I don't think they're talking to God. I think they're conducting introspective meditation. But I'm not really concerned about the metaphor that they're using, which is how I see it. They may really believe it, and that's fine, as long as it's not causing harm. I mean, for me, I'm totally okay with religion, except when it starts to cause harm to particularly other people, but also to the individual if it's someone I care about. But for the most part, I don't see that. And so a lot of times people will think that I'm a spiritual person, and it's kind of a struggle because on one hand I want to correct them, but on the other hand it's like, what is the benefit in doing that?
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's always the balancing between our beliefs and the relationship, right? I find myself in that situation quite often as a rabbi, especially since people are expecting me to behave in a particular way. So,
Sure.
Right. You know, another topic that we've talked about many, many times that often is connected with religion, and I find among religious people, they often think, well, you know, an atheist, you know, they can't have a strong, you know, moral core because that is the exclusive territory of religion. And yet, again, you're one of the most moral people I know. So
I try.
you succeed, right? So where did that come from?
I mean, well, for me personally, I kind of feel like it's an innate thing. In fact, my journey to become an atheist was somewhat driven by my compassion for other people and my belief that it wasn't moral for a choice to be made arbitrarily about a person having a particular faith or following a particular set of beliefs. But I kind of object to the concept because morality, I don't believe, really comes from religion. I think religion is more of a trailing indicator. And Professor Mark Smith, who happened to be someone I went to high school with, wrote a book called Secular Faith that talks about this in some detail. But so, for example, for most of the history of Christianity, charging interest on loans was considered immoral, and slavery was okay. And obviously we have different beliefs. And we even see today the changing attitudes towards divorce, sexuality, and things like that. The religions have more followed or at least this is the argument that's made, and I believe, have more followed this morality rather than leading it. And so I think that is interesting. And so, for me, I feel like I have a privilege in that I can draw moral lessons not just from a single religion, but I can learn morality from, the Christian faith that I was raised in, from talking to you, from Buddhism, from Stoicism, from many sources. And I think, I take a personal responsibility, and I'm, my moral values have changed over time as I've learned more. And I think, at the very basis, though, there's a sense of justice. There's a sense of how do I want to be treated? How does society function well? And I think it's important to think about those things.
All right. So, that kind of answered, I think, my next question is, if there is no God, to whom we're ultimately responsible. So then, why be moral, right? I mean, I think that's a very central issue, right? And I think you kind of answered that.
Yeah, one of the examples I think of is if I go on vacation someplace and I eat in a restaurant that I'm incredibly unlikely to eat in again, why do I tip the server? And it's because that's how I would want to be treated. Like when I go and sit down to have that meal, I've created an implicit contract that if the service is good, if I appreciate it, that I'm going to tip that person. And I think it's important to follow through on those implicit contracts. And sometimes you don't know what the implicit contracts, if you're in a different country, a different culture, what have you, and you're not going to get it perfect. But I think it's important to try and to, I think you end up with a serendipitous benefit from that.
Very good. So I got the high sign. Unfortunately, we can't do our normal 3-hour sessions, but right. I really appreciate you coming and sharing your thoughts. And these are deeply personal on a certain level, but hopefully we can get a better understanding and. My hope is rather than make this one more battleground, that people can come together in mutual understanding.
I totally agree. I mean, I think that as an atheist, I try not to ignore the value of religion, and at the same time, I would like religious people to understand that just because I don't believe there's a God doesn't mean that I don't see value in their beliefs and what they have.
I think that's the reason why we're friends, right? Michael, thanks so much. Thanks very much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. That's our show for this week. Stay tuned next week when my guests will be Jennifer Marcinelli, holistic health specialist and burnout recovery specialist, and Derek Smith, fashion designer and menswear consultant. Courage at all times, my friends. Belle? Still my Marie. Courage at all times, my friends. Marie, you're still my Belle.